In our previous video, we explored how Shaka Zulu rose from exile to build one of Africa's most powerful kingdoms through innovation, military discipline, and fearless leadership. But what happened after Shaka was gone? This episode takes us deeper into the story, tracing the internal struggles, foreign threats, and wars that ultimately brought the Zulu kingdoms to its nails. From Dingaan to Cetshwayo and from Blood River to Ulundi, this is the fall of the Zulu Empire. After Shaka Zulu's assassination in 1828, his half-brother Dingaan Kasensankankona took the throne. Dingaan had been complicit in Shaka's murder and he moved swiftly to secure power. He eliminated many of Shaka's loyalists and rivals in a purge and set up his royal capital at Umgungunlovu, near the White Imfolozi River, a sprawling homestead whose name means the place of the elephant. Through the early 1830s, Dingaan enjoyed a period of relative stability within Zulu land, even maintaining some diplomatic ties like Shaka's had. For instance, Dingaan continued contact and trade with the Portuguese at Delagua Bay, exchanging ivory and captives for firearms and goods. However, a new external threat soon confronted him: the arrivals of the Voortrekkers, the Boer migrants from the Cape Colony. Starting in 1836, Dutch-speaking Boers farmers embarked on the Great Trek northward to escape British rule, and by 1837 they began entering Natal, the southern neighbor of Zulu land. The Boers desired land to settle, which inevitably led to tension with the Zulus. Boer leader Piet Retief approached Dingaan in late 1837, seeking permission to settle in Natal. Dingaan appeared to negotiate. According to accounts, he promised Retief and his people lands in exchange for recovering a stolen head of cattle from a rival chief. Retief successfully retrieved the cattle and returned them to Dingaan, apparently fulfilling his part. But in February 1838, at what was meant to be a celebratory gathering, Dingaan betrayed and killed Piet Retief and his delegation of about 70 people at Umgungulovu. Dingaan soldiers then swept through the nearby Boer camps, attacking scattered Voortrekker families in what became known as the Winning Massacre of February 1838, killing men, women, and children. This provoked all-out war between Dingaan Zulus and the Voortrekkers. The Boers regrouped under a new leader, Andries Pretorius, and on 16 December 1838, they met Dingaan's army in the famous Battle of Blood River in Com River. Using a fortified wagon lager formation and a superior firearms, the Boers defeated the Zulu decisively. The Zulus suffered enormous casualty. Over 3,000 warriors were killed, while the Boers reported only a few wounded and no dead. The Income River ran red with blood, giving the battle its name. In the wake of this defeat, Dingaan's hold on the throne weakened. His half-brother Pande Kasensangona, another brother of Shaka, who had been kept marginal till then, saw an opportunity. Pande gathered thousands of Zulu followers and allied with the Boer forces of Pretorius against Dingaan. In January 1840, Pande and his Boer allies confronted Dingaan. They defeated his remaining army near the Pongola River, forcing Dingaan to flee northward into Swaziland. Dingaan was soon killed in exile, either by pursuers or by the Swazi, as the account varies, thus ending his reign. Pande was installed as the new Zulu king in 1840 with Boer support. In return of their help, the Boer expected loyalty and likely territorial concessions. Indeed, the Boers founded the short-lived Republic of Natalia from 1839 to 1843 in the lands south of the Tugela River, which had historically been under Zulu's influence. King Pande, often regarded as a more courteous and conciliatory ruler than his brothers, reigned from 1840 to 1872, the longest of any Zulu king. During Pande's time, the Zulu kingdom coexisted uneasily with growing European presence. In 1843, Britain annexed the Boer Republic of Natalia, creating the British colony of Natal adjacent to Zulu land. Pande generally maintained peace with the British, avoiding provocations. He even allowed Christian missionaries limited access to Zulu land, and he did not seek wars of expansion as Shaka did. Some territorial conflict did occur, such as disputes with the Swazi or borders tension with the Boers in the transfer. But Pande's Zulu were not in major sustained war during his rule. However, Pande's later years saw internal struggles over succession. By custom, the king eldest son by his great wife would be heir, but there was rivalry between Pande's sons, Cetshwayo and Buyasi, also known as Umbuyasi. In 1856, This field erupted into a battle at Indondankosuka on the lower Tugela. Cetshwayo emerged victorious, defeating and killing his brother Mbuyasi, and thus establishing himself as de facto heir to Mpande. After this, Cetshwayo effectively took on main leadership duty while Pande grew old. When Pande died of natural causes in 1872, Cetshwayo had already been the practical power behind the throne for some time. The transition was smooth. Cetshwayo was officially installed as king in a ceremony attended even by British representative. The Natal Secretary for Native Affairs, Cetshwayo Shipstone, presided over Cetshwayo coronation in 1873. King Cetshwayo Kapande inherited a Zulu kingdom that was still strong and cohesive. Cetshwayo sought to modernize his army to some extent and maintain the proud military tradition of Shaka, but he also faced an increasingly aggressive British Empire on his doorstep. By the 1870s, the British in Southern Africa had embarked on a plan of confederation, aiming to unite colonies and defeat independent African kingdoms to secure labor and land. The Zulu kingdom with a disciplined army was perceived as a significant obstacle to British ambition. Sir Batufre, the British High Commissioner, and Cetshwayo Shipstone in Natal viewed Cetshwayo Zulu as a threat that needed to be neutralized. Although Cetshwayo had tried to maintain cordial relations, he had even avoided conflict with the British and sent envoys to Point Victoria. The expansionist policy of the British won out. In December 1878, the British delivered an ultimatum to King Cetshwayo that was almost impossible to accept. Citing minor border incursion and incidents as a pretext, the British demanded the Zulu disband their army, forsake Zulu military traditions, and accept a British resident in their land, effectively surrendering their sovereignty. Cetshwayo, not surprisingly, did not comply. As a result, the British launched an invasion of Zululand in January 1879, marking the start of the Anglo-Zulu War. The British plan involved a three-pronged advance into Zululand, with columns of British troops and African auxiliaries in the Natal native contingent, converging on the Zulu royal capital of Ulundi. Cetshwayo, for his part, mobilized the Zulu Empire to defend their homeland, although he reportedly favored a defensive stance, hoping perhaps to negotiate. Many Zulu commanders were eager to prove themselves in battle. The war's first major clash shocked the world. On 22nd January 1879, at the Battle of Isandlwana, the Zulu army delivered a stunning victory against the British. About 20,000 Zulu warriors, utilizing a familiar arm formation and fighting with spear and sheath, along with a smattering of firearms they had acquired, attacked and overran the central British column camps at Isandlwana Mountain. The British force, though armed with modern rifle and artillery, was caught off guard and outmaneuvered. In a few hours, the Zulu impies annihilated a sizable portion of the Queen's army. The British lost around 1,300 soldiers, including European officers and African auxiliaries. Entire companies were wiped out. It was one of the worst defeats ever suffered by British against an indigenous force. The Zulu followed their custom, took no prisoners, and showed no mercy on the battlefield. This remarkable victory at Isandlwana demonstrated that the Zulu kingdom at its core still had many military prowess instilled by Shaka. However, the very next day, a portion of Cetshwayo's forces met a different fate at Rock Drift. On the night of 22nd to 23rd January 1879, about 4,000 Zulu warriors, mainly the reserve, who had not fought at Isandlwana, led by Prince Dabulamansi Kapande, attacked a British missionary station at Rock Drift on the border. The outpost was defended by only 150 or so British and colonial troops. In a dramatic reversal of Isandlwana, the British successfully defended Rock Drift, fighting through the night behind makeshift barricades. With disciplined rifle fire and bayonet counterattacks, they inflicted heavy losses on the attacking Zulu. The Zulu forces, which acted against Cetshwayo's earlier order not to attack fortified positions, suffered around 500 casualties and failed to overrun the post. The defense of Rock Drift became legendary. 11 Victoria Crosses were awarded to the defenders and provided a much-needed boost to British morale after the Isandlwana disaster. In the following months, the war ceased. The British halted their advance temporarily and called for reinforcements from across the empire, determined to avenge Isandlwana and conquer Zululand. Cetshwayo and the Zulu maintained a defensive posture, avoiding full-scale confrontation while the British column regrouped. By March and April 1879, the British, now substantially reinforced, resumed their invasion under Lord Kempford. Superior numbers and firepower began to turn the tide. The British won key battles at Kambula on 29 March 1879 and Gingindlovu on the 2nd of April 1879, repelling Zulu attacks with heavy casualties. At Kambula, for example, the Zulu assault on a fortified British camp was beaten back with thousands of Zulu losses, marking the beginning of the end for the Zulu army. The coastal column, meanwhile, relieved the besieged British garrison at Exile. Finally, on the 4th of July 1879, the British army advanced on the royal kraal of Ulundi. In the Battle of Ulundi, the last major battle of the war, British troops formed an impregnable square formation with cannons and Gatling guns at the corners. Cetshwayo's bravest warrior charged repeatedly but could not break this British core. Over 1,000 Zulu were killed by concentrated rifle and artillery fire. The Zulu army was decisively defeated and scattered. The British proceeded to burn Ulundi, the Zulu capital. King Cetshwayo, who had not been captured in the battle, became a fugitive. He was found and captured in August 1879 in the Ongoye forest, then sent into exile at Cape Town. The Anglo-Zulu War was effectively over, lasting roughly 6 months from the first invasion. The mighty Zulu kingdom had fallen into the British Empire, though not without leaving Britain bloodied and out by the Zulu warriors' courage. Although the Anglo-Zulu War ended with a British victory, the Zulu kingdom story did not simply end in July 1879. The British were cautious about fully annexing Zulu land immediately, so instead they implemented a policy to divide and weaken the Zulu polity. In 1879, British officials, notably Sir Garnet Wolseley, split Zulu land into 13 chieftainships, each under different chiefs who were ostensibly given authorities. Some of these were traditional Zulu leaders, but others were individuals who had cooperated with British. For example, John Donne, an European trader allied with the British, was made a chief over a large territory. The idea was to fracture the centralized Zulu power that Shaka had built, harkening back to the pre-Shakan era of multiple small chiefdoms. The British indirect rule strategy placed a British resident advisor in Zululand to oversee the chiefs. The result of this partition was civil strife. Many Zulus, especially the royalist faction known as the Zutu, led by Cetshwayo's brother Prince Dabuko, resisted the new order. They remained loyal to the Zulu royal house and clashed with the appointed chiefs who were seen as British puppets. Between 1880 and 1883, internecine conflict plagued Zululand. The British imposed arrangements proved unworkable, and colonial authorities eventually reconsidered their approach. In a surprising turn, the British allowed Cetshwayo to return from exile in 1883, hoping he could stabilize the situation. Cetshwayo was reinstated as a king over a portion of his former domain, but under tight British supervision and with greatly reduced power. He was confined to a smaller central region of Zululand. Rival chiefs such as Sibehu of the Mandlakazi clan and Amu of the Genetseni were allocated other sections around him. A British resident stationed with Cetshwayo kept an eye on him. Essentially, Cetshwayo was restored as a figurehead to quell the unrest, but the kingdom was fragmented. Even this partial restoration did not last. In 1883, civil war erupted again. King Cetshwayo's Usutu loyalists struck first against their chiefly rival, but were repelled. Soon, Chief Sibehu, backed by some Boer mercenaries, launched a devastating attack on Cetshwayo. In July 1883, at the Battle of Indene, Cetshwayo's new kraal, also referred to as Ulundi in some accounts, Cetshwayo was defeated and narrowly escaped with his life. The level of violence in this fratricidal war was said to exceed even that of the battle against the British. Cetshwayo was gravely wounded and fled. He died a few months later, in February 1884, possibly due to injury or poisoning. Thus, the last officially recognized king of the independent Zululand passed away. Leadership of the royalist Usutu faction fell to Dinuzulu Cetshwayo, Cetshwayo's 18-year-old son. In a desperate attempt to recover power, Dinuzulu struck an alliance with Boer's volunteers from the Transvaal, and in 1884, with Boer's fighters' help, led by Commandant Louis Botha, among others, Dinuzulu defeated Sibehu, driving him out of Zululand. But this victory came at a high price. In exchange, the Boer mercenaries claimed a large chunk of Western Zululand as payment, proclaiming it the new republic, with its capital at Vryheid. Effectively, part of Zululand was ceded to the Boer control. This alarmed the British, who did not want the Boers expanding to the coast. In 1886 to 1887, Seeing the chaos and fearing Boa's encroachment, the British decided to formally annex Zululand. In 1887, Zululand became a crown colony of the British Empire. The Zulu and the Uzutu at first acquiesced and were settled on a reserve, but resentment of the colonial rule remained high. In 1888, the Zulu and his followers rebelled against the British administration, seeking to restore some independence. The British summoned Sibehu, their former foe, now turned ally, to help suppress this uprising. The Zulu forces, fighting a guerrilla campaign in the rugged Handler forest, held out for a while, at one point even defeating a colonial force in battle. Eventually, overwhelmed by British troops, the Zulu surrendered. In 1889, he was arrested and later exiled to St. Helena, the same remote island that once held Napoleon, after being tried for treason. With the Zulu removed, the British completed their integration of Zululand. In 1897, they annexed what remained of Zululand into the colony of Natal, fully ending any semi-autonomous status. The Zulu kingdom as an independent polity had ceased to exist. British colonial policies like hot taxes, enforced labor migration to mines, and division of land among chiefs eroded the traditional Zulu social order. A final Zulu armed resistance, the 1906 Bambata rebellion against a poor tax, was brutally crushed by colonial forces. The Zulu people were now subjects of the British Empire, their territory carved up and their king in exile. Yet, the legacy of the Zulu kingdoms lived on. The cultural identity and pride of the Zulu were not extinguished by military defeat. Many Zulu continued to honor the memory of Shaka and Cetshwayo, and the institution of the Zulu monarchy survived in a symbolic form. The Zulu was eventually allowed to return to South Africa in 1898, and his son, Solomon Zulu, and later descendants were recognized as figurehead paramount chiefs of the Zulu. In the 20th century, the Zulu nation remained a major demographic and cultural force in South Africa, and to this day, the Zulu royal lineage continued. The late King Goswi Welitini and the current King Misisulu are direct descendants of Cetshwayo. The story of the Zulu kingdoms, from Shaka's incredible rise to the catastrophic clash with the British, had become legendary, featured in countless books and films. It serves as a testament to the resilience and bravery of the Zulu people and a poignant chapter in the broader history of colonialism in Africa. The saga of the Zulu kingdom is a dramatic tale of rise and fall. In a scant few decades, Shaka Zulu forged a mighty empire through bold leadership and military genius, revolutionizing warfare with the Equa spear and the buffalo horn formation. Zulu kings like Denga and Cetshwayo later struggled to preserve their sovereignty against relentless external pressure, from Voortrekkers to the British Empire. The Anglo-Zulu Wars of 1879 signaled the end of the Zulu kingdom's independence as spear met gun and an age of African dominance gave way to colonial rule. But the spirit of the Zulu was never fully vanquished. The traditions, social structures, and pride that defined the kingdoms lived on in its people. Today, the story of the Zulu kingdoms is remembered for its powerful leaders. Shaka's name still looms large, its formidable army and vibrant culture, and also its cautionary tale of coalition with imperialism. It remains an essential chapter in African history, one that educates and inspires, reminding us of the rich heritage of the Zulus and the epic scale of their kingdom's rise and fall. But even as we reflect on this powerful story, one question remains: what is the true legacy of Shaka Zulu and the empire he built? Shaka was not just a warrior, he was one of the greatest rulers in African history, a man who turned a small chiefdom into a mighty kingdom. His ideas changed warfare, his leadership united many clans, and his impact reached far beyond his time. Today, we will remember his name, but what do we really make of his legacy? Was Shaka a ruthless conqueror, a nation builder, or both? And in the world we live in now, what can young Africans learn from the rise and fall of the Zulu kingdom? And if you are curious about the other tribes and peoples that shaped Southern Africa beyond the Zulu kingdoms, check out our detailed videos on the peoples of Southern Africa, from the Elizan and Khoikhoi to the Bantu-speaking groups like the Xhosa, Soto, and Shona. It's all broken down clearly. Tap the link on your screen to dive deeper into their stories. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for supporting Edu History TV.